Okay, people overwhelmingly, more overwhelmingly than anything I've seen, wanted to hear the bear story. Happy to tell the bear story, but there are two things I need to cover first. Let's go. Okay, the bear story. The bear story takes place on the Inside Passage. Before I tell you the bear story, I need to tell you two things. The first is a Brett peeve. The Brett peeve is when people misidentify bears. And the other part of that is when people say grizzly bears are the most dangerous aggressive bears. They're not. Polar bears are actually the most aggressive towards people, followed closely by the coastal brown bear, which is frequently misidentified as grizzlies. If it's at the coast, it's a coastal brown. Coastal browns evolved on a diet richer in protein than grizzlies, so they grew bigger and more aggressive. And because they were on the coast and not in forests, they're more inclined to fight versus flight, whereas with grizzlies, it's a bit of a 50-50 crapshoot. What we saw in Alaska at the coast were coastal browns. The brown is a subspecies of the grizzly. There are a bunch of different browns. There's like an Asian brown bear. There's the Kodiak brown bear. They're all related. Okay, the other thing, we need to look at a chart. Okay, this is the chart of where we were. And the reason that this is important is that after crossing Cape Fanshawe,
up ahead of us is Cape Fanshawe, and we would like it to be calm for that because it's a pretty prominent point.
We paddled up through here and right here hit a decision point. Our plan was to paddle across the Five Fingers to the Brother Islands and then work our way up here into Seymour Canal. At that decision point, just before the crossing, Sarah and I, who did a great job working together, had our first disagreement. It was almost an argument. And then we realized after about 30 seconds, we were arguing in favor of the same thing, which was to not do that big crossing and not go up Seymour Canal. What we would miss going up Seymour Canal is a pretty classic railroad stretch. You have to portage your kayaks across this section to get to Juneau. There are railroad tracks in this little rail car. You put your boats and your gear on it and you just roll it through that on the cart across this portage. A couple years ago, there was a video about a woman in a cabin in Alaska. Black bears were attacking her kayak.
Thank you for leaving my kayak alone. I'm going to pepper spray you in the face. That's what I'm going to do to you. No! Get away from the kayak! Bear, you're breaking it! You're breaking my kayak! Why are you doing that?
And this is why we didn't want to go, why neither of us wanted to do that crossing and head up Seymour Canal. That area has the highest density of black bears in the world. So much so that there is a black bear observation post there where they study black bears. Neither of us wanted to do the crossing because that would lead us to the bears and we didn't want to deal with the bears. So we were both arguing in favor of skipping it and continuing up Stevens Passage towards Juneau. That set us on a collision course with the cruise ship as well as the bear. Okay, so we have our encounter with the cruise ship, keep paddling north, find a perfect campsite. The way that it was a beach and then a fairly steep incline and then a flat section. And then behind that flat section were dense forest. And on the left side, there was a rock face. So on the flat spot, we pulled our boats up there. We set up our kitchen and our boats, and our tents were probably 30 feet past our boats. We had a lovely dinner. I have no idea what we ate, but the weather was so nice, like we put clothes out to dry and things like that. We get into bed. It is never dark. It's summer in Alaska, so it's never dark. Sarah falls asleep. I'm in my sleeping bag listening to an iPod. That's how long ago this were. There were iPods. And I'm listening to something and my battery dies. So I take out my earbuds, I pull out a book, I start reading the book. I hear something moving in the forest behind the tent, but if you've done stuff in the outdoors, you know that when you're in your tent, a squirrel sounds like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. So I figured it was a deer or something small. I opened the tent, I looked around, I didn't see anything. This was my 4-season tent, which had doors and vestibules on both sides. And so I opened the back door and looked out and didn't see anything. Closed it back up, went back to reading. Maybe 10 minutes goes by and I hear something else. And I unzip the tent and stick my head out and I look in the forest and I don't see anything. And then I look to the left where our boats are and there's a brown bear standing on my kayak. Now, when I say standing on my kayak, it was on all fours. Its front left paw was in my cockpit. It had put its paw down, and which popped my cockpit cover off, and its front right paw was on my stern hatch cover. It was straddling Sarah's boat, and its back feet were on the ground. Sarah immediately woke up. I can only imagine that my body tensed or something like that. And she woke up and she said, "What is it?" And I pulled my head back into the tent and I said, "There's a bear standing on my kayak." So we both got up quickly, both grabbed bear sprays. We had 2 bear sprays. A few days earlier, we had been lying in the tent sort of comparing bear sprays, and the delivery device, the canisters themselves were identical. Hers was Canadian. She was from Canada. Mine was American. We noticed they were identical, except mine, the American bear spray, had 2% capsaicin, and hers only had 1%. So clearly American bear spray is better, because more is better, right? We thought that was very funny. We get out of the tent. We made our first of 3 mistakes. Mistake number 1, I got out of the back of the tent. She got out of the front of the tent. We should have gotten out of the tent on the same side, so we looked like one big animal. Neither of us are particularly big. We started yelling at the bear to go away, you know, go away, bear. The bear, the only way that I can describe the face that the bear was making was that I had a dog a long time ago we got from a shelter in New York, and its previous owner must have trained it that it was not allowed in the kitchen when you're cooking. But every now and then she would try to get into the kitchen. And when I told her to leave the kitchen, she would make a face like, "What? I don't understand what the problem is." And that's the face that this bear was making. Bear did not look threatening. Bear did not look threatened. Bear was just standing there trying to figure out what was going on, trying to figure out what the problem was. I am pretty sure I said to Sarah, "I'm going to take the safety off of my bear spray." We each were holding our bear sprays. And we were yelling at the bear for probably, I'm going to say 30 seconds. It was probably 5 seconds because of adrenaline amplification. And then I realized the bear wasn't doing anything. It was just standing there. And then I realized, oh, we're standing on a beach that's just made out of small rocks, like smaller than fist-sized rocks. So I picked up a rock and threw it at the bear. Now, I grew up playing hockey. I can't really throw a ball, and the bear was 25 feet away from me, and I missed, but the rock hit the rocks near where the bear was standing, and that he didn't like, and he backed off a little bit. I threw another rock, and the same thing, I didn't hit him, but he backed off a bit more, and then started to climb this rock face to get back into the forest, which is, I'm sure, how he came down out of the forest. I threw one more rock, which hit the rock face behind him. And this bear quickly, fluidly, gracefully moved up the rock face, which was probably like, if you're a rock climber, probably like a 5'6", in like 2 strides, and was in the forest and gone. I need to stress, the bear never did anything aggressive. The bear never bared its teeth. The bear never stood on its hind legs. The bear was probably 20 feet from us. It was big, but not the biggest bear I've ever seen, but it was probably 600 to 800 pounds. I want to say that his head on all fours was about 8 feet off the ground. So again, with adrenaline amplification, it was probably 6 feet off the ground. It was a big bear. It was gorgeous. I will put in a photo of that type of bear. Obviously, it's not a photo of the bear because we were a little busy, but that was the bear encounter. When the bear left, Sarah turned to me and said, "Do you think we should leave?" And I said, "Oh, I think we should leave." So we broke down camp. I should stress, it takes an hour and a half to 2 hours to break down camp and pack boats. We were on the water in 50 minutes. That's how quickly we packed boats. We shot a very quick little piece of video as we were paddling away and paddled north. Now, while we were paddling, we started to calm down, and I realized that the bear's front right paw was resting on my rear hatch cover. Inside my rear hatch, in plastic bags, in a dry bag, in the closed hatch cover, was all of our food garbage from like 2 weeks of paddling. Not a whole lot, but a fair amount. And we were positive that he smelled that. And if we had gotten out of the tent a minute later, he probably would have just either broken the hatch cover or ripped the hatch cover off, and our trip would have been over. We got extremely lucky. As we paddled north, we saw him on the beach, further up on the beach, and clearly he was just walking the shoreline looking for dinner. It was probably 10 o'clock at night at this point. The light was gorgeous. He was gorgeous. Absolutely beautiful. We paddled north. We crossed a small inlet to another body of water, which greatly amplified the amount of land that bear would have had to walk to. And we felt like that was probably safe. We paddled for probably 40 minutes. Felt like that was probably safe for us to camp there for the night, that he was far enough away. It was a crappy campsite. We pulled the boats up as best we could. We didn't really unload them. We tied them together and then pulled that line up and set up our tent and tied the boats to the tent. So if the boat started to float away, they would pull the tent and wake us, which wasn't really necessary because neither of us really slept. We were so fired up, and then like everything that we heard sounded like a bear. Now, I need to stress, before this, we had seen bears a bunch of times, 3 or 4 times, always on land when we were on the water paddling. So never a threat, super beautiful. That's the way you want to see a bear. You don't want to see a bear in your campsite. From that point on in the trip, we were completely paranoid about bears. I'm pretty sure we were south of Juneau at this point, and so we dumped all of our garbage in Juneau, cleaned everything up as best we could. Obviously, we were going to make new garbage as we were paddling, but we were then paranoid we were going to see bears. And I remember one day we got off the water really early, and I took a nap, and Sarah was like, "Yeah, I couldn't sleep. I was positive a bear was going to come out." So like that was our mindset. We were positive we were going to see a bear. We, of course, never saw another bear for the rest of the trip. So that is the bear story. A week and a half later, my wife and I were in British Columbia, camped in this campsite. There I was like, we were totally going to see a bear here. And we couldn't find the bear spray. I'm pretty sure I left it on the dock in Skagway when we got off the water. Okay, so that's the bear story. I hope you enjoyed that. Bear stories, to be fun and good, don't have to involve getting mauled. If you have questions about bears, and all of the bear information I was talking about at the beginning of this video comes from Stephen Herrero's book, Bear Attacks, Their Causes and Avoidance. Bear Attacks, Their Causes and Avoidance is like the textbook on bear attacks. Great book. I highly recommend it. I wanted to show you that book, but I can't find it. I think my friend Johnny might have it. Johnny, finish that book and send it back to me. So that's the bear story. I hope you enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed Wildcard Wednesday. This was Wildlife Wildcard Wednesday. All right. Do me a favor, hit like, hit subscribe. I'll see you outside.